Hey everybody, Jansen here. This is reading time. The books we'll be reading today. Well, so far these are the 4 books we're reading. We went through a couple others. The team book is Money Mindset. I think what I'll do is I will also read a page out of this one today also. Now if you kind of want to see, these are the books I'm reading right now. As you can see, there's a few of them. It's not my book collection, but it is the books I have out because that's what we're reading. And just so you know, we're reading one of the books. So, we started with Relentless yesterday. So, let's start with I Dare You today. Okay, so we're reading I Dare You. Okay, by William Danforth. Okay, we are on page 8. Okay. So, I dare you to adventure. Before we start on the great adventure, let's be dead sure we want to take it. Unless one is interested and enthusiastic, he would not even want to go on a picnic, let alone start a journey destined to bulk large in life's affairs. When our appetites have a sharp edge, we enjoy meals. Adventure means living to the full. You will want to start when you know how much happiness it will bring you. Some of my young friends who are freedom-loving pleasure seekers maintain the drifting along with life and happiness, that resistance is vulgar, that self-indulgence is self-expression. Rot. I take issue with them. The line of least resistance make crooked rivers and crooked men. Each fish that battles upstream is worth 10 that loaf in lazy bays. True, the mass of people prefer to be the easy way. Old ways require no effort. Physically or mentally lazy people do not want to adjust themselves, but they have never tasted the thrill of victory. I remember once during the First World War, a captain was wounded in no man's land when returning from the raids. No man's land is between the trench warfares. When you get out of the trenches, that land you cross, that's no man's land. Snipers and machine gunners shot across the defiant barrages as though daring anyone to come and get his prostrate body. The company commander called for 2 volunteers to undertake the dangerous mission of rescuing the wounded man. The whole company stepped forward. The major chose the 2 men with the most deserving record and longest service. Out on their bellies, they crawled and brought in their captain. In crack regiment, it is a privilege to dare and to give. There are no big thrills in the trenches, but just poke your head over the parapet and you'll find excitement enough. Your days won't be humdrum when you lift your head above the crowd. I dare you to adventure is my message to those red-blooded young leaders I meet every summer at the American Youth Foundation camp in Michigan. Every year there come to this camp hundreds and hundreds of boys and girls, young men and young women, who aspire to be leaders. During certain hours the whole camp resounds with keen competition. These young people have in striving to best one another in a game of baseball, in a diving contest, or in a climbing to some lofty height. Or at another time of the day, they are just as intense, just as interested in mental training program. Because these young people are to be future leaders and their trained directors have learned the art of making their mental programs just as interesting and absorbing as their physical program. At night in the council circle, each tribe competes against each other in entertainment features. Each feature leader learns the art of expressing himself, entertaining his fellow campers. He handles his personality in such a way it attracts leaders and influences others. During a devotional program, these hundreds of young people are just as absorbed in expressing and developing their spiritual selves as they are on the athletic field or in the study room or in the council circle. These young campers have realized that all sides of life can be equally interesting. Show me boys and girls anywhere who enjoy life more than do these. My own self at my very best all the time is the camp motto. They are daring to live at their best following a 4-square program, and they are following a glorious time doing it. Living right has a lasting kick in it. Living wrong is a bit of foam at the top, that's all. And the spirit of a crusade, life is a glorious adventure. If you jump out of bed in the morning full of fight, daring people or circumstances depress you, you're on the road to victory. If you face problems aggressively, they are half solved already. If you aspire to larger responsibilities, they'll meet you halfway. But how to dare, you ask? That is the coming. First, it is necessary to agree that living aggressively changes the whole complexion of life. So many are praised to fear. You fear losing your job, you fear sickness or hard times or failure. But remember, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the conquest of it. Not until you dare to attack will you master your fears. And why dare? Because unless you dare, you cannot win. Deep down in every heart, a desire to be somebody and to get somewhere. But so often we sit waiting for the opportunity. I have found opportunities do not come to those who wait. They are captured by those who attack. Perhaps you are sitting back in your chair reading this and saying, "It is all very well for him to say that, but my circumstances are different. It is impossible for me to dare." I challenge that thought in your mind. I know it is your deadly enemy. Because of it, you, more than others, must dare. The humdrum life is the one most in need of adventure. You can cure your weakness by vigorous action. Start something. Break a window if necessary. I'm daring you to think bigger, to act bigger, and to be bigger. And I'm promising you a richer life and more exciting life if you do it. I am showing you a world teeming with opportunity. The rewards for your daring were never so rich or so plentiful. Science, religion, business, education are all looking for the men who dare face life, to attack rather than defend. Before you read further, be honest with yourself. What do you think of life anyway? What do you think of yourself? Are you satisfied that you are carrying a responsibility equal to your capacity? Or are you content to have prosperity looking at your life so far and say, that is all he was capable of? Or are you one of the priceless few, one of those with a relentless feeling that someday you're going to climb to your rightful place of leadership? That someday you're going to create something worthy of your best? If this is your attitude, then my voyage of discovery is not in vain. You are the volunteer for whom I am looking. Then make that someday you have been waiting for today. Okay, next chapter will be tomorrow on that one. Not done yet. Got a couple more books. Okay, so that was that chapter. All right, we'll go with Relentless now. We're on chapter 2, page 15 of Relentless. Relentless is Tim S. Grover with Schreier Lesser Weck. It's called Relentless. We are on chapter 2 of Relentless, page 15. Are you ready? The night the Miami Heat beat the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the 2012 NBA championships, I wrote a message on a slip of paper before the game and put it in my pocket. It was my longtime client and friend Dwayne Wade. Dwayne had called me after Game 2 of the finals, asking if I would fly to Miami to see if I could get him and his damaged knee through the rest of the series. I was surprised. We have a long, successful relationship, but we hadn't worked together for the last 2 seasons, in part because he had chosen to stay in Miami to train near his teammates LeBron James. But we had stayed in touch, and like all my clients, past and present, he knew I would always be there if he needed me. A different player might not have made that call. He could have relied on LeBron to carry the Heat to the title. He could have tried coping with the pain, hoping his knee would give him just a couple more games. That's what most players would have done. But when a championship is on the line in your career, you don't let others carry the load, and you don't just hope it all works out. You make every possible move to put yourself where you need to be. So with the series tied 1-1, I flew to Miami. It was obvious Dwayne's knee would require surgery after the season. He couldn't slap a quick solution on that. I told him I'd do what I could to make him feel stronger and more explosive for the next few days. I also told him that his one championship ring from the 2006 wasn't going to be enough. He would need at least 3 to have a career that would be considered meaningful. But what I really wanted to say to him was this. When you're one of the greatest athletes in your sport, you don't announce you're old at the age of 30 and ready to pass the team along to the younger guys. If you think old, you become old. It wasn't that long ago you won the NBA scoring title after fighting back from simultaneous knee and shoulder surgeries, willing yourself through your grueling 2-month rehab that would have taken anyone else 3 months. You did that. Do not tell me you can't do this. That's what he wanted to say. For the next few days, we worked on things he hadn't done in a long time, sometimes until 2 a.m. Alone in the arena, away from the teammates and media and all the other distractions. For the first time in a long time, it was all about him. The Heat took Game 3 and then Game 4 to lead the series 3-1. One more win, or Battleground, would move back to Oklahoma City and the Thunder's home court advantage. It was time to finish the fight right now. A lot of our work was physical. His body was coming alive in ways he hadn't experienced in a long time. But as with all serious competitors, the key component was mental. He needed to find his way back to being the real Dwayne Wade, and not just one of the acclaimed Big Three of the Miami Heat. He had become so accustomed to sharing the stage with LeBron and Chris Bosh and the rest of the team that he'd forgotten where he came from, how hard he had to work to be one of the very best. I don't believe in long, windy pep talks or speeches. Anything that requires a long explanation probably isn't the truth. And when I say something to one of my players, he knows he's getting the truth. On the night of the Game 5, when the Heat won the title, the note in my back pocket read, "In order to have what you really want, you must first be who you really are." I want him to feel that time when it wasn't about smoke or lights or hype or keeping everyone else happy. When it was all about what happened on the court. When he fought with his life to get there. When anyone who fucked with him would get a 48-minute blast of controlled rage. It was time to trust what he felt inside, not what everyone else was telling him to feel. That's your name on the jersey. Remind them who you are. Go get what's yours. That night, as the young and determined OK City Thunder tried and failed to fight back from elimination, Dwayne was all killer instinct, deep in that zone where he's explosive and dominant and aggressive. Others would have great performances, Mike Miller and Shane Baitner and all the other games beyond all expectations. But as the minutes ticked down, it was Dwayne's cool, intense confidence, commitment, and leadership that earned the championship and got him that second ring. I never gave him the note. I didn't have to. That night he was relentless. Being relentless means never being satisfied. It means creating new goals every time you reach your personal best. If you're good, it means you don't stop until you're great. If you're great, it means you fight until you're unstoppable. It means becoming a cleaner. We're all used to hearing about the closer as the ultimate competitor, the guy you can always count on to finish out the game or make the deal or get what you need. The closer does what it's supposed to do, gets the credit, and goes home a happy hero. Forget that. Think bigger. There's a level even higher, completely attainable, but so special that most people don't even dare to dream of it. Think Michael Jordan, the ultimate cleaner. Michael never cared about achieving mere greatness. He cared about being the best ever. There's nothing wrong with being great. It's better than being good. Being great means you excel, which is a hard to accomplishment and something to be proud of, but it doesn't make you the best. Greatness makes you a legend. Being the best makes you an icon. If you want to be great, deliver the unexpected. If you want to be the best, deliver a miracle. This isn't just about sports performances. There are cleaners in all walks of life. Look at the elite of any group, the top athletes or wealthiest CEOs or smartest students or strongest freshmen. It doesn't matter. It's fairly obvious that while they're all great at what they do, some will always perform on a different level. Look at the famed 1992 Dream Team with 11 Hall of Famers. You can probably separate a couple of them from the best. They all had the talent, but a couple of them will forever be considered among the best of all time. Michael set the standard for killer instinct and competitive drive. Each time the Chicago Bulls sealed another championship, there were 6. He wouldn't just hold on to the numbers of fingers for the rings he had already won. He'd hold up an extra finger for the next championship. After the first ring, he held up 2. After the second, he held up 3. After the 5th, he held up 6. We'd be back in the locker room, champagne dripping down the walls, and he'd already be telling me what he needed to work on for the next season. A full year before he took his brief sabbatical to play basketball, he was already buzzing in my ear about baseball workouts. Never satisfied, never content, always pushing higher and higher. That's a cleaner. Larry Bird is a cleaner. Kobe Bryant, cleaners. Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, Charles Barkley. They're all a handful in the game today. Not too many people, probably not one you'd expect. Stardom doesn't automatically make you a cleaner. Winning doesn't, and not just winning once. You have to be able to do it again and again. In the business world, we're talking about Bill Gates, the late Steve Jobs. Most team owners are cleaners. Guys such as Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban and Jerry Ressenford, who run their teams with the same cutthroat attitude that made the juggernauts in business. Most presidents are cleaners, and good luck getting reelected if you're not. There are others in all walks of life. I'll let you consider the possibilities. Remember, it's not about talent or brains or wealth. It's about the relentless instinct drive to do whatever it takes. Anything to get to the top of where you want to be and to stay there. Dwayne wasn't the most gifted player on the floor the night the Heat won the title, but he was the only one who knew what everyone else had to do in order for them to win. That's what champions you. They put people in place to get results and make everyone else around them look better. A cleaner's attitude can be summed up in 3 words. I own this. He walks in a different confident level with results. A cleaner has the guts and the vision to steer everything to his advantage. You never know what he's going to do, but you know something's coming, and all you can do is wait and watch with fear and respect for this ability and handle everything without discussion and analysis. He just knows. Being a cleaner has almost nothing to do with talent. Everyone has some degree of talent. It doesn't always lead to success. Those who reach this level of excellence don't coast on their talent. They're completely focused on taking responsibility and taking charge, whether they're competing in sports or managing a family or running their business or driving a bus. They decide how to get the job done, and then they do whatever it is necessary to make it happen. These are the most driven individuals you'll ever know, with an unmatched genius for what they do. They don't just perform a job, they reinvent it. I own this. I'm talking about the waiters who knows what everyone on his customer drinks and how he orders their steaks. Everyone in town wants to sit at his table. And they all leave huge tips because they appreciate the excellence. I'm talking about the school teacher who won't give up until every student understands the lesson. The administration assistant who earns more than some executives by knowing what the boss needs before the boss even realizes it. The parents working overtime to pay the bills and send the kids to college. It's the bus driver who gets on his bus every day, knows all the passengers, where they get on and where they get off. Always smiling, friendly, but silently thinking, this is my fucking bus, and there will be no fucking around on my bus. It will be clean and on time, and everyone who messes with me on my bus will be back on the street walking. Navy SEALs are cleaners. They lock in on their mission and stop at nothing to execute it. They know what has to be done and get it done. They expect to succeed, and when they do, they never celebrate for long because there's always more to do. Every accomplishment is just a stepping stone to the next challenge. As soon as they've hit their target, they've already stalked their next conquest. Most of their work is done quietly behind the scenes, alone, without fanfare or glamour. Cleaners don't do it for the show. They don't go through the motions. A true cleaner never tells you what he's done or what he's planning. You find out after the job is complete. And by the time you realize what he's accomplished, he's already moved on to the next challenge. Why do I call them cleaners? Because they take responsibility for everything. When something goes wrong, they don't blame others because they never really counted on anyone else to get the job done in the first place. They just clean up the mess and move on. Think about the custodian who quietly works alone late at night. He calls no attention to himself. No one sees him work. No one knows what he does, but the job always gets done. It has to, so everyone else can do their jobs efficiently. In his own way, he's the most powerful guy in the building. He has unlimited access. He knows where everything is and how it all works. He has the keys to every single door. He can go anywhere unseen. He knows what everyone else is doing, all the dirty little secrets. He didn't go home. Who snuck in late at night? Who left an empty whiskey bottle under the desk? Who left condom wrappers in the trash? If you have an emergency, he's the guy to call. The cleaner is never the first person you bring in. He's the last. When it's finally obvious that no one else can handle the situation, no conversation, no panic, no discussion. Cleaners are rule breakers when they have to be. They only care about the end result. When things go wrong and everyone else starts up to panic, the cleaner is calm and unflappable, cool and steady, never too high or too low, never too happy or too depressed. He never sees problems, only situations to resolve. And when he finds the solution, he doesn't waste time explaining it. He just says, I got this. And when it's over and he gets the results, all the others just stand there shaking their heads in disbelief, wondering how he did it. Failure is never an option. If it takes years, he'll find a way to turn a bad situation to his benefit, and he won't stop until he succeeds. Cleaners have a dark side and a zone you can't enter. They get what they want, but they pay for it in the solitude. Excellence is lonely. They never stop working, physically or mentally, because it gives them too much time to think about what they've had to endure and sacrifice to get to the top. Most people are afraid to climb that high because if they fail, the fall will kill them. Cleaners are willing to die trying. They don't worry about hitting the ceiling or the floor. There is no ceiling. There is no floor either. Cleaners can't be invented by media or hype. They're self-made, and whatever they have, they've earned it. They've never in it for the money. The worst thing a cleaner can do is sell out. He knows what he's worth, and he'll remind you if you make that mistake of forgetting. But the money is secondary to what really drives him. But here's the most important thing about a cleaner. The one thing that defines and separates him from any other competitor. He's addicted to exquisite rush of success. The exquisite rush of his success. His lust for it is so powerful, the craving is so intense that he'll alter his entire life to get it, and it's still never enough. As soon as he feels its taste, holds it, The moment it's over and he craves more. Everything he does is to feed that addiction. It's not that he loves the process, he just loves the end result. I know you've absorbed a lifetime of advice about this. Love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. Or love what you do and the money will follow. That might be true for some people, but not for a cleaner. The idea of loving what he does would mean he was content, and a cleaner is never ever content. Cleaners understand they don't have to love the work to be successful. They just have to be relentless about achieving it. And everything else in between is a division and a distraction from the ultimate prize. To an athlete, it means endless hours in the gym training and sweating and hurting. To a business owner, it's time away from home and family, sacrificing a personal life for professional gain. For the teacher, it means untold, unpaid hours getting every student through the 4 years of high school and into college. The result is all that matters. Eventually, though, all cleaners have to walk away from their addiction before it completely consumes and destroys them. A cleaner is all about control, and soon as he feels the addiction is controlling him and not the other way around, he'll back off until he regains control. That's why you see highly charged athletes, coaches, CEOs, and other extremely intense and driven individuals step away once they become the best of the best. The pressure to go even higher becomes so consuming, so they pull back, refocus, and usually return within a renewed appetite for even more. But there's the good news. Before you run away thinking you can't possibly live your life this way, it's not necessary, even possible, to be a cleaner in all aspects of your life. You don't have to be relentless about everything. You don't have to be the best at everything. You can't be unstoppable in your career and your relationships and your other interests, because achieving excellence in any one of those areas requires you to say, I don't give a damn about anything else. If you're trying to be a cleaner in business, you'll probably sacrifice your personal relationship. If you're a cleaner in sports, you likely won't excel in business. If you want to be a cleaner parent, your career will take a hit. Cleaners sacrifice the rest to get what they want the most. Most people stress about that. A cleaner never does. Cleaners don't care about having it all. You ever see some of these billionaires? They're the worst dressed guys in the room. Warren Buffett still lives in a house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. True cleaners don't care about the bling or the showy lifestyle. They look at the bottom line. All that matters is the end result, not the instant gratification along the way. In my work with elite athletes, I have to know whom I'm dealing with, their mental strengths and weaknesses, how far I can push them, how far they're willing to go. One day during the off season, I looked around my gym at the dozens all-star and another dozen potential all-stars, all playing in the NBA caliber summer pickup games. Every player there was considered great, yet each performed at a different level with different motivations and limitations. Some weren't willing to go full strength every quarter. Others were content to just play a little ball. And that's fine with me, but I pay close attention to the subtle differences that show me how serious someone is about getting ahead of everyone else. Let's face it, at the highest levels of success in any area, everyone has reached some degree of outstanding achievement. So we're talking about shades of greatness. But if you want to be the very best of the best, it's the details that make the difference. So just from my own thinking, I devised a 3-tiered system that I've never shared with anybody prior to writing this book. Categorize different types of competitors. Coolers, closers, and cleaners. Good, great, and unstoppable. You can apply these standards to any group of individuals, just like around your team, your office, your friends, your family. Everyone has a different definition of personal success. Some people allow life circumstances to decide for them. Others decide what they want and say, good enough. When they get it, and then they are selected few who can't even define success because keep raising the bar on what that means. Coolers, closers, cleaners. You'll consistently find that most people are coolers. A small percentage are closers. And maybe, just maybe, there's a cleaner in the group. But if it's there, you'll probably won't realize it until the first time you see him in action, and then you'll never forget. A cooler is careful. He waits to be told what to do. Watches to see what everyone else is doing, and then follows the leader. He's a mediator, not a decision maker. He's not taking sides unless he's forced. He can handle a certain amount of pressure when things are going well, but when things get too intense, he kicks the problem over to someone else. He can make a huge play, but he's not ultimately responsible for the outcome. He's the setup guy, keeping things cool until the closer or cleaner can take over. A closer can handle a lot of pressure. He'll get the job done if you put him in the right situation and tell him exactly what you want and need of him to do. He'll study all sorts of scenarios so he can anticipate what might happen. But he's uncomfortable when faced with something unexpected. He seeks attention and credit, and he's very aware of what everyone else is doing and what others think of him. He loves the reward and perks and associate with him and fame, in which you'd financial security over winning or success. A cleaner is rarely understood, and he likes it that way. Here's what I'm talking about. Coolers have an amazing game. Closers have an amazing season. Cleaners have an amazing career. Coolers worry about the competition, how they measure up. Closers study the competition and plan their attack based on the opponent. Cleaners make the competition study them. They don't care whom they're facing. They know they can handle anyone. Coolers avoid taking the winning shot. Closers take the shot if they know they have a good chance of making it. Cleaners just trust their gut and shoot. They don't have to think about it. Coolers won't offer to take on a role they're not comfortable with. Closers will take the role if you ask them, and they'll do it well. If you have enough time, prepare for and study the situation. Cleaners don't wait to be asked. They just do it. Coolers let others decide whether they're successful. They do the job and wait to see and get approved. Closers feel successful when they get the job done. Cleaners never feel as if they've achieved success because they've always more to do. Coolers don't want to carry them, but they're first to slap you on the back when you do a good job. Closers want the credit for getting the job done and love being congratulated for what they did. Cleaners rarely congratulate you for doing your job. They just expect you to do it. Coolers think they want the spotlight, but when they get it, they usually handle it badly. Closers stand in front because they need to show who's in charge. Cleaners don't have to show who's in charge. Everyone already knows. Coolers will eat whatever you feed them. Cleaners will order what they want and satisfied with a great meal. It doesn't matter what a cleaner eats. He's still hungry again in an hour. The closer can win the game. The closer can win the game if given the opportunity, but the cleaner creates the opportunity. The closer can be the star, but the cleaner maneuvers him into the job. Cleaners never need a kick in the ass. Everyone else does. Good, great, unstoppable. Are you a cleaner? Almost every cleaner I've ever known, and I have known plenty, share some combination of the traits below. You don't have to identify with all these things all the time, but I have no doubt you've experienced at least a few of them in the same point. Some will intrigue you, some might repel you, but all of them will define your ability to be relentless. There are 13 to remind you there's such things as luck. There are circumstances and outcomes, and you can control both if you desire. But if you insist on relying on luck, do it as the great Wilt Chamberlain did. Believe his number 13 wasn't unlucky for him. It was unlucky for his opponents. That's how cleaners think. As you see, each label number 1, because if you give people a number list, they think number 1 is the most important, and the rest just follow behind. If it's a long list, they lose interest after number 3 or 4. But on the list, everything is equally important. If I give a player a list of things he must do to stay strong and healthy, and he skips in a step, none of it works. So I don't number anything 1, 2, 3, or 4. I number everything number 1. The same is true for the book. You can wander through these chapters in almost any order, and I think you'll find the last is important as the first. When you're a cleaner, number 1, you keep pushing yourself harder when everyone else has had enough. 1, you get to the zone. You shut everyone else and can control uncontrollably. 1, you know exactly who you are. You have a dark side that refuses to be taught to be good. Number 1, you're the intimidation by process. You thrive on it. Number 1, when everyone else is hitting the in case of an emergency button, you're all looking for you. You don't compare with anyone else. You find opponents' weaknesses and you attack. Number 1, you make decisions, not suggestions. You know the answers while everyone else is still asking the questions. Number 1, you don't have to love the work, but you're addicted to the results. Number 1, you'd rather be feared than liked. Number 1, you trust very few people, and those you trust better never let you down. Number 1, you don't recognize failure. You know these more than one way to get what you want. Number 1, you don't celebrate you achievements because you always want more. If that list makes you nod and think, so it's not just me, you're already on your way to be a cleaner. You'll see yourself in chapters that follow as we look more closely at each of the traits that form the platform of your business. But I also know you might be thinking, why? What's the upside? Never satisfied and driven by addiction and sex, never relentless. Why put a value on your uncomfortable alone? Why would anyone crave more pressure, more stress, more intensity? I'll tell you why. Because the reward is just so fucking good. You do all this to achieve what few others will ever comprehend or accomplish. I won't ask you to transform into something you're not and don't aspire to be. I simply ask you to open your mind to the possibility that you can do so much more with what you already have. If you're serious about going where you've never been, pushing higher and further than you or anyone else thought you could, it's time to trust the voice inside you telling you to do what you know you can do and become truly relentless. Page 33 tomorrow. Stay on. 2 more books. We're still going on strong. Have I scared anybody away yet? I get a little into my books. Sorry. Okay. So that's for tomorrow. All right. Next chapter with Chesty Polar. We are on page 20, Baptism of Blood, Chapter 3. Baptism of Blood, Chapter 3. Marine, The Life of Chesty Polar, The Army in History to Win 5 Navy Crosses by Burke Davis. All right, here we go. The stretch of the topics welcomed the young Marine to the port of Prince. When the ship entered the harbor, a sour sweet breath from mountain forest, which also bore the taint of decay from waterfront. Beyond the red-roofed city, the hills rose incredibly green. It was mid-July 1919. Polar and Muff got a brisk greeting from Captain Donald Kelly at the barracks. Report at 4:30 in the morning, equipped for battalion drill. You might like a few beers in the hotel, but beware that rum. The two took rooms at the hotel where they met the town's chief of police, a Captain Kahn, an old Marine sergeant who seemed impressed by Polar's request for help in learning the Haitian language, Creole. You learn just 10 words a day and you'll soon be squawking like an avid. It's a bastard French African. They speak it but never write it. I'll give you some common words and a few phrases just as they sound, and you can start tonight. Polar listed these in a pocket notebook, and in the roar of the bar began his acquaintance with the new language. Haiti was the strife-torn western tip of the island shared with Dominican Republic. Revolutions have been shaking the government since 1914. After almost a century of freedom from France since 1916, at the request of the Haitian government, Marines had policed the country amid violence which had taken nearly 2,000 lives, almost all Haitian. General Smedley Butler had created the Guarda-Marine de Haiti with a shrewd disregard for president. The senior officers were U.S. Marine officers, whose brief tours of 2 years created a supply of field training commands, but he chose Marine enlist men to act as junior officers or his constable and allowed them to stay as long as they wished, on the theory that they became more valuable as they learned the language and customs of the people. In practice, it was these Marines enlisted men who operated the force. Under them were many native soldiers, most of them veterans of the old Haitian army, and from this pool were drawn many second lieutenants, sergeants, and corporals. In 1919, the rebels were the Cocos, fierce jungle-wise Negro tribesmen who roamed the hill country, pillaging settlements and sometimes sweeping into the cities. Even the capital of Port-au-Prince was not safe from the raids. Atrocities were common. The war was 5 years old when Louis Polar arrived for his first taste of combat, and it still raged furiously. Polar and Muff were aroused by a Haitian maid at 3:30 the next morning with a pot of alarming black coffee, a French roll, and a jigger of rum. At sunrise, they reported for battalion drill. As he fell in, Louis saw a striking soldier, Sergeant Major Napoleon Louetti, a quadroon who stood well over 6 feet, a lean, powerful figure of about 190 pounds, a man of remarkable poise. His high, thin nose gave him an aristocratic expression. His pale brown scalp was as bald as an egg. Louetti had been a general in the old Haitian army. Polar thought he must have the blood of one of Napoleon's generals in his veins. Captain Kelly drilled the battalion for 4 hours in the stifling heat. Orders were in English, perhaps the only English these native soldiers understood. It was the most perfect, close-order drill Polar had seen. VMI's young cadets and the Paris Island Marines were amateurs by comparison. The Haitian non-coms were armed with hardwood sticks 2.5 feet long and an inch or less in diameter. At the least sign of attention, the culprit was cracked on the head, and men stepped warily to avoid the sticks, or cockamameks, for that's what they were, like bars of steel. When the battalion marched off the field to its barracks, Polar saw 6 or 7 bodies on the ground and hurried to his company commander, who replied harshly, "Mister, do you think I'm blind? They'll soon be back. It happens every day. Just a touch of the heat." Around the barracks, a line of Haitian women squatted against a wall. When the battalion was dismissed, every native soldier stripped naked and the women charged into the open surrounding them. They brought change of clothing for the troops and bundled up the sodden garments. The men dropped to the ground. While the change was made, the women laughed, watching their men and merely pointing out the variety of exposed charms. They soon disappeared with the soiled clothing. Polar thought it was the most efficient laundry service ever devised. That's funny. His first foray into the enemy country came without warning. The following night at dinner, Captain Kelly gave him a casual order. "A non-com will pick you up at 3 a.m. 0300, 3 a.m. Tomorrow on the horseback. You'll take a pack train to Maribeles, La Caparos. You will carry ammunition and shoes with an escort of 25 mounted men and a sergeant." Before he went to bed, Polar consulted older officers as the location of the inland towns. When he faced his men in the morning, he found that the none spoke English, not even the sergeant. He counted the cases of ammunition and bags of shoes, the horses, men, and pack saddles, and with gestures and barked orders in English, put them in motion. The first stop was Maribeles, a town of 40 miles away. By roads through bandit-infested country, Polar determined that he would not spend the night in the open, for his head was full of tales of ambush in the Philippine campaigns. While they were hurrying along the trail, his sergeant often came to him to complain, gesturing wildly. But Polar could not understand him. About 4 p.m., without warning, Lewis stumbled into the first fight of his career and proved his instinct for combat. The pack train was ambling around a wooden bend between hills which were littered with stones and cactus when it met an oncoming Kako-bound band of about 100. Equally surprised and in the same formation, Polar spurred his horse and yelled, "Charge! Attack! Fight! Hurry!" The columns charged, horses, pack mules, and all. And in the thunder and dust, the fierce yells of Kako broke for the hills, firing a few stray rounds as they went. They were gone so quickly that Polar doubted his sense for a moment. But he had shot one of them, a small black barefoot soldier from whose body he took a sword, so fine that he could touch its point to the hilt. Polar's only casualties were superficial, bullet wounds to 5 of his horses and mules. By driving the column to its limits, the lieutenant reached Maribeles by 9 p.m. and turned over to the Guadamere officer half of his cargo. Polar asked the officer, a Lieutenant Whedon, to find out the cause of his sergeant's day-long tirade. Whedon spoke to the Haitian and laughed. "He's trying to tell you to slow down, that you can't march the troops at your speed. He says you've been on double time almost entirely since 4 a.m. and you're wearing them out and animals. Tell the sergeant that I appreciate his efforts, but before anything else is done, he will see to the animals, have them rubbed down, cooled out, and fed. After an hour, they'll be watered. At 4 a.m., we clear Los Cabos. The column will be in line." The sergeant shouted in outrage, "Tell that black devil to obey orders and create no more trouble. Tell him to leave the poor animals here under one guard and load the rest in the morning." He went to battalion headquarters with Whedon. "We're here report to Major E.A. Alston, the commander." "Congratulations, Polar." "For what, sir?" "You've been bloodied, man, and come through it. I hadn't thought of it. We didn't lose a man and only a few animals hit. Nothing bad." At 4 in the morning, they were on the trail again and soon covered the 16 miles to Los Cabos. The sergeant came near mutiny when Polar told him that they would return at noon. But there was worse to come. They reached Maribeles in the late afternoon, and Lewis ordered the departure for Port-au-Prince at 4 a.m. He considered arresting the raging sergeant. During the stop at Maribeles, Polar saw a Haitian soldier report from a raid deep in Kako County. The soldier, Private Saramontout, reached out into the saddlebags and drew out 2 heads, black, grinning masks already begging to shrink, lips drawn back over gleaming teeth. He held them high for the Marines to see, immensely proud. Late that afternoon, when the patrol reached Port-au-Prince, an automobile rolled beside Polar, and departed Commander Colonel Walter and Hill leaned out. "Why didn't you go to La Cabros?" "I did, sir. I've been sending trains there for years, and you're the first ever got there and back in 3 days? You've got a permanent job running trains. How are your animals?" "All right, sir, so far as I know. A few flesh wounds. They better be all right. I'll be down to inspect them at 8 a.m. tomorrow." Polar seemed preoccupied when he turned over the mounts to Lieutenant Richards at the corral. The old man's going to eat me alive about those sorebacks. I told him they were okay, and he's inspecting in the morning." "Polar, I'm an old 7th Cavalry man and the best damn vet the Army ever had. Biggest liar, too." "All right, wait and see. Before Colonel gets here in the morning, I'll curve every one of those sorebacks. I'll give you $10 if you do." Before 8 a.m. in the morning, Lewis and Richards were awaiting Colonel Hill at the corral. "You owe me $10, old man. There's not a soreback in the lot." Polar walked down to the lines. These aren't mine, horses or mules either. The colonel won't even know it. If he's any kind of horseman, he will. Just hand me the 10. You're safe. He won't know one end from another." Polar paid, and when he saw the expression of wonder on the colonel's face at the inspection of the animals, he knew that the money was well spent. Within a few days, Polar was back on the trail, driving his mule train to mountain outpost. Lewis tried to join a small striking force, Mobile Company A, newly formed to clean out the Caco bands in the Mercolasas Calabos area. The company was full, but in less than a week, its commander went to a hospital, and Colonel Hill summoned Polar to take his place. The next morning, Lewis took his company of 100 by rail to the hill town of Croix de Bouquet. His officers were the newly commissioned native lieutenants, Lieutenant Bronat, and his first sergeant was one Claremont, a tiny black man who experienced perfect control over his troops. In the ranks was also Private Sermont, the headhunter, whom Polar had pried from Welda's command by promising to make the young native a corporal, though he could neither read nor write. More than 100 native women awaited the company at Course de Boutique, ready to follow and support it. Sergeant Claremont detained his women to act as cook and laundress for Polar. The column marched over the mountains to Miribas. They had only 2 days of training before plunging into the wild country, and Polar spent much of it on the rifle range, where he saw each man fire 25 rounds, the first of his efforts to teach every man who served with him to become a sharpshooter. He also broke up the squads into 2 4-man firing teams, anticipating Marine Corps policy by 20 years. With the aid of Latet and Brut, he drilled the men for short fights against the enemy in ambush. He used his bulgar, who would march with him on the trail, to sound plays in the manner of a football coach. 1 bugle blast and the column faced left. 2 bugle blasts, they faced right. 3 bugle blasts and the 2 leading the platoon deployed into the line. The soldiers were taught to seek cover, to prepare foxholes when possible, and to fire only when they saw the enemy. Each man carried a grenade, and there were a rifle grenade launcher and Lewis machine gun with every fire team. They had breakfast of rice, beans, and coffee. There was no midday meal. They marched 50 minutes of each hour, much of it at double time, and Polar soon found that he had no more need of the 10-minute rest periods than his mountain trainer soldiers. A few hours of town on their first patrol, then he saw men slyly removing their leggings. Polar ordered all of them removed since they were tight and uncomfortable, and slowed the troops. He noted the men now resembled Confederate infantry with trousers tucked into socks. The column soon halted, and when Polar moved up, he saw a Camp Fowler giving birth to a baby. A group of women calmly attended her at the trailside. Polar was alarmed, but Looney assured him, "It happens much with our people. The column may move, the women will see to her, and she will soon be marching with us." At reveille the next morning, a proud, grinning soldier, Private Franks, brought his wife and greasy baby boy to be admired. The child was covered with gun oil in the absence of other lubricants and gave off material aroma as he suckled. The woman walked with the column all day. Luete and Berlin made a new proposal. Captain, we are wasting time with so much daylight marching. We must move it by night if we wish to catch the chaos in camp. We will be ambushed by day if they are many or if they are few, and they will hide. Fine, we start tonight. The column pushed on. It was the dry season, and the trail led along the heights. On the second night of the march, Polar saw fires on the ridge below them. A man whispered, "Cacos!" Polar reached into his pack and pulled out a pair of old basketball shoes he had drawn from the athletic officer, and the others took off their shoes. With Letty and the two sergeants, Lewis moved down the trail toward the enemy camp. Barat remained in command of the company. Drums were loud in the camp, which was on a ridge amid open fields, and the small party crept to within a few yards. The Cars were having a celebration over some victory. The scouts climbed back to the company, and Pollard prepared the attack at dawn. He placed the men in line on the sides of the ridge and sent crews within three of the machine guns to the left, where they covered the enemy rear on the flank. They will run after the first firing, the old lieutenant, and they'll run right into our fields of fire. The brown man grinned with his approval. The valley cracked to the first moment of daylight, and there was complete surprise. The fight ended quickly. Polar found 17 bodies on the ridge, lying among them old farm buildings and crude lean-tons. Most of the casualties were in the rear where the machine guns had covered the open, and at least 100 machetes were lying on the field. When the troops occupied the grove, the place was alive with gamecocks, starked on the short lines, 203 of them in all. The men fell upon them excitedly. They brought out blackened 5-gallon tins once used for kerosene and gasoline, and soon had them boiling with water and rice. A cockfight tournament began. The birds fought in the Haitian fashion with their natural spurs honed as sharp as razors. Men squatted in a ring about the fearless cocks who thrown into the ring. Once the pair after another. As one went down, a new cock took his place. The victim's neck was rutting without ceremony. Quick hands plucked and dressed him. His body was cut up, and he went into the pot. A tantalizing aroma filled the grove. Puller found the soup from the tins delicious, though its only ingredients were chicken, rice, and salt. The company spent the day fighting cocks and eating chicken and rice and sleeping. At night they were off again, carrying the dozen surviving roosters. When they went back into the Mirabales, the cocks earned them small fortunes in the cockpits of the town. Luente told Polar, a marvelous system for weeding out the boys from the men. Victory or the cooking pot. It is like this in the combat, Captain. On the trail soon afterward, the captain had a lesson in the stern discipline of Haitian troops. A soldier near the end of the column began to straggle a shining black man whose body shook with rolls of fat. He sat at the side of the trail, moaning that he was exhausted. Luity barked orders, and the yelping culprit was trusted with a lariat tied to the saddle of a pack mule. He was dragged at a lively pace along the trail. The body thumped and tumbled for 700 yards until the screams and subsiding to groans and desperation. Lunti then relented, and the bleeding man staggered to his feet. To Polar's astonishment, he strangled no more and made his way with the column until the next halt, when he fell as if he had been poleaxed. Give me a second here, I'm going to try. It seems cruel, Captain Lee asked. Without it, the patrol must fail, for if one man falls, others will fall out. They will indulge their weakness, and we cannot allow this. Do not forget that we are 50 miles from base, Captain, and that if we had left this man alone on the trail for 1 hour or 10 friends at Cacos, we'd have cut him into ribbons. Polar was convinced, but when he looked at the blood-crusted skin of the sleeping shoulder, Lude smiled. Within a week, Captain, he will be a new man. We are not so savage as we seem. Loetti also taught Polar the value of living off the country. In the twilight, Lewis saw the preparation of a feast that seemed a miracle. They had bought steer from a native farm as the column passed. Loetti had urged generosity so that the farmer would remain friendly. How much? $30. For that big steer? It is enough. It is enough. More than enough. He will not soon again see so much money. The troops were expert butchers. One man hit the steer on the head, the other an axe, and the animal sank to its knees. Another opened its throat with the slash of a knife as the blood gushed. Still another tossed a lariat over a tree limb, hitched it to the back legs of the steer, and packed the mule, dragged the carcass until it dangled in the air. A soldier slit the hide from the tail to hoof, wrapping another lariat around folds of the skin, and as the body rose higher in the air, the hide was peeled from the body by a second mule. In a half an hour or less, the animal had been cleaned, cut into pieces, and dressed, and beef was browning on the skewers over dozens of fires. Men shaved off strips with their knives, while the meat ran red. They ate for 2 hours or more. The hide went into a pack saddle, and the steer's head, bones, and scraps were tossed into a Dutch oven dug into the ground. These were cooked until daylight, when the soldiers ate once more, devouring the last morsel of the meat and gnawing at the large bones. When they took up the day's march, their bellies thrust out as they were pregnant. They will march 3 days on such food with nothing more to eat, Captain Looney said, but there was an emergency ration for the future. Each man carried in loops over his belt 2 food strips of beef, each about an inch square. These strips were salted down each night, though Polar thought the sweat of their bodies sufficient to cure it properly. The meat lasted for weeks in this way, but few steers were to be found. Day after day, the fighting rations of the patrols was beans, rice, and coffee. At mid-morning, a few days later, the head of the patrol reached the banks of the La Chaux River and the remote under orders until Polar came up. The river was about 75 yards wide. From the opposite shore, a native in Dominion dress robe out of a magnificent horse, a big buckskin with white mane and a tail who splashed through the shadows under perfect control, without bridle or saddle. A wonderful horse, Polar said. I'd surely like to have him. Brant muttered in Creole, and a rifle cracked. Polar saw one of his men pull his rifle bolt and eject a cartridge. The beautiful horse stood in the river, looking nervously about. His rider floated downstream in a strain of blood. The stunned Polar turned to Brett. Did you order that man shot? Hell, sir, you said you wanted the horse. Anything the captain says is our command. We have discipline here, sir. The men seemed unmoved by the blood-clotted killing. My God, catch the horse, get the men over the river, and see if you can find that man's family. Lewis never again expressed himself idly before these soldiers. His search for the family of his victim was futile, but the horse was his mount for years in Haiti, a strong young stallion which never failed him. Company A had waded the stream without opposition, but as they mounted the ridge beyond, a rifle fired, and there was a terrifying shriek of the bullet overhead. Polar ducked. Lieutenant Laney, what was at his side? Captain Polar of office did not flinch under fire. They stand, the men take note of the things in the first importance. I'm all right. What makes those damn things sing like that? I will show you. Sir, when you have driven the enemy, when the company gained the crest and the ambush had been cleared, Lundy brought Polar a Cockle rifle, a single shot fired .45 Agru. He exhibited some remarkable ammunition. They have little to fight with the sir, so they make it off what they can. There is little enough lead, and so they cut telephone wire and stick these bits of copper into the shell, using a little lead to hold them. It is this that makes such devil streams, as if it was frightening the men. It rattled me. I never heard such a sound. Captain, you never hear the bullet that hits you. It is one of the few blessings of battle. During the rest on the ridge of a man handled Polar half of a pineapple. Lewis began to eat it. He tossed it aside when he saw that it was blood-stained. On closer inspection, he found the hillside was sprinkled with blood of the Cockle bandits, though no bodies remain. They carry off every body and every wounded man. Okay, we're going to stop there. We'll read that page again. All right. So that's what we're reading now. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to shut this off for a second. I got to get something to drink. And then I got to make a few phone calls, and I'm going to come back, and we will read the next part of The Art of War, Chapter 5. Okay? So give me just a second to do that.